Hello and welcome. This is the Low Hanging Fruit Pod. Quick social media stuff. You can find us on Twitter at LHF_pod. You can find my Medium page at austinjandrews.medium.com. And you can email us at lowhangingfruitpod@gmail.com. So last night, huge win for the Bolts in Montreal. It felt like there were more than 3,500 people in the stands, just from the sounds and from what it looked like on TV. I'm not gonna lie. Maybe they filled the lower bowls a little bit, but it looked a little interesting in there. I don't understand why they have 100,000 people all crowded outside, and then they shove 3,500 people inside of the stadium. Whatever, I guess open air makes a difference or something like that. Not for me to decide. That we also found out that the families of the Lightning will not be able to travel with them for Game 4. They will not be allowed in the arena to celebrate with them afterwards if they are to take Game 4 and finish the sweep. So same thing as last year. It's a bubble life for celebrating sports victories. I don't think that matters long term. I don't think the players will be too disappointed if they decide, oh, well, we swept them. I wish my family was here, is probably what we're going to hear a lot of. I don't understand, I guess, in the back of my head now that we talked about it last time, but saying that, oh, let's drop a game so we can lose in Tampa. Like, I kind of want the sweep now.
Yeah.
Don't you? Like, I want the sweep. I don't want to go 4-1. I want to just cut the head off on what is it, Monday? The game is? Yeah.
It is Monday.
Monday. So I guess let's just jump right into it. Period one immediately starts off really fast. Let's see here, my notes, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. So no Alex Killorn again this game. Joseph gets the call again. There was some video of him way early in morning skate being the first person out there. He had sandals and shorts on, standing on the side of the bench, just stick handling a little bit and taking in the scene. And you love to see that from a young guy who's actually he's gonna have a lot to do with this franchise over the next couple seasons, because we'll be losing a lot of people, which we'll talk about later. But just to have that energy from a young guy who's getting his chance, because I don't think he played a single game the last Stanley Cup Finals. So for him to get 2 games in a row while Killorn is out, and he actually showed up and worked his ass off, which I love to see. Opening lineups were the same for us. We put out the third line, Coleman, Gaudreau, and Gord again. The Habs try to match it with Armia, Stahl, and Perry.
I thought that was weird.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't think you're going to ever pick that lineup to start a Stanley Cup final unless you're trying to play chess with John Cooper. So it didn't last very long. They were off the ice fairly quickly, but it was just to match their energy, which it didn't work.
No.
Out immediately with quick shots on net. And then we just keep talking about this. Our defensemen coming up on the offensive rush. Our first offensive rush that was a 2-on-1 was Jan Ruda and Victor Hedman against the Montreal defensemen. So our forwards were nowhere to be found, and it was Jan Ruda and Victor Hedman coming up screaming on a 2-on-1 rush to get the puck in deep. They got a shot off, didn't go in, but they cycled. So the puck comes around the back of the boards. Hedman passes it up, passes to Ruda. Ruda fires and misses over the top. Then they do the same exact thing. They cycle back. Hedman, back, I think it was Palat that he passed it to. Probably it was Hedman to Palat, back to Ruda. Ruda just fires a wrist shot right over Carey Price's right shoulder for the first goal. Just to start things off, that was at a minute 52 in. 1-0 off of a Ruda goal with defenseman pressure in the offensive zone almost immediately. Couple seconds go by and they're already getting a second chance. Joseph looked really good deep in the boards. They put out the fourth line after the goal. And then with that pressure that Joseph is getting in that deep area of the zone, Stahl flips a puck right up over the glass for a delay of game penalty. And then within seconds of that, cycling the puck. They're getting set up in the offensive zone. And Hedman looks to his left, Stamkos is covered, looks to his right, Kucherov is covered, and decides to take matters into his own hands and fires an absolute rocket. It was a 99.2 mile per hour slap shot from in between the dots to go past Carey Price on his glove side. And immediately the Habs take a timeout. So after goals being a minute,
it was a good.
What?
Sorry. I remember we were talking when it happened, right? Like we thought it was a weird timeout because it's their only. But in hindsight, it worked.
It did. It calmed things down for the remainder of the period. Well, I mean, compared to the first 2 minutes of play, they had to take that timeout. They don't take that timeout, and the Bolts score another goal within 5 minutes of the game starting. Carey Price gets pulled.
Yeah,
like it would happen, and that is something that I don't really think any hockey fan wants to see. Carey Price getting pulled 5 minutes into Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. You're kind of waving the flag and say, let's do this a different way. So they take their first timeout. Right after this, Coleman whiffs on a hit on Edmondson and goes hard into the boards with his back. Didn't necessarily have to be helped off the ice, but he was encouraged to do so by the trainer. He left the bench for a little bit, and Colton took his spot on the third line, which immediately leads to another chance, which was that first flurry that you saw after the second goal of Chernak walking down the lane and just firing that shot. Price knocks it aside, but Johnson and Colton and Matthew Joseph are right there, still slapping it on the net. That was the last real intense offensive pressure that you saw like that for the rest of the first period from the Bolts. But it was cool to see Colton come up and be like, okay, like I got to be the guy on this line right now. Like, let's make this happen. It just goes on and on. They're kind of back and forth. The Bolts' first line is getting unrelenting pressure the entire time that they have the puck. But Savard overplays a little bit in the offensive zone, which you talked about him being kind of a liability offensively. I think that was after the first game recap. He came up a little far and took a shot and left Sergachev by himself to fend off Caulfield and Suzuki. Caulfield just comes streaking down the left side and rips one, but it pings off the bar and goes wide. So, but it was the first hint where it was like, oh shit. Like, I think we talked about the counterattack really being the only chance for Montreal to gain any traction in this, but they're pulling four back and trying to cherry pick goals. So cycles again, same thing happens. D-men overpress a little bit on the offense, and Deneau comes up from the other side this time. He comes from the left side and rips a wrist shot past Vazzy, make it 2-1. It goes off the bar and in. There wasn't a whole lot of space there. But did you see the way that they were celebrating these goals? The Canadians? It was like they sunk the game-winning goal every single time they scored. And, it gets worse as it goes on, obviously. But, Deneau is losing his mind after that goal. And, I mean, you have to have that kind of energy. Being down 2-0 in a series, trying to make this happen at home, and you already gave up 2 goals in the first 3.5, 4 minutes. But even with these streaky plays, it's very evident that the Habs don't want to play the speed-on-speed game. Is there anything that you noticed specifically that, hinted at that during the offensive pressure from the Bolts? Did it look to you like they were sitting back on plays, waiting for a counterattack?
Well, I would say the first thing that I noticed was like when at the start of the game when they put out the fourth line, which is by far their slowest line, and against our most energetic, quickest line. Clearly, because before they were trying to do the Toffoli line, right?
Toffoli, Suzuki, and Caulfield.
Yeah. So, which that line's quick, but they needed to switch it up to figure out how to give that line chances. But like clearly there was a game plan change, and they thought that Stahl and Perry could match up with I don't know, like Gord and Sorelli and stuff.
Yeah,
so
on speed, it's not going to happen. And I guess I can only assume what the thinking was is like, oh, well, we're going to put our like instigators out there to start off, and like we may not be able to match their speed, but we'll match their overall presence on the ice. And yeah, I think that was the first sign for me too, where I was like, they do not want to play end to end against the Lightning because they'll lose that game. Even towards the end of the first, I mean, right before the Bolts took that Sergachev penalty that I'll mention in a second, the Habs were playing 4 in their zone and 1 person towards center ice, just kind of waiting in between the blue line and center ice while they were trying to regroup, just trying to pick off something fast up the middle. And that was the only way that Deneau got ahead on that rush to sink that in. And then Caulfield before that. They don't want to play end to end.
So one thing I was thinking about, like while watching this game, in the game 2 recap, I talked about, you always see like the defenseman to the forward pass through the neutral zone, like blue line to blue line, just skipping the neutral zone and trying to get that odd man rush. And they couldn't get tape to tape at all in game 2. And that was something that's unusual to me. Like usually we get, 5 or 6 chances like that a game. And so 2 things happened. One, the chances in game 3 were there. The defense was much more effective at like pushing the puck, much more effective at like, picking up the pace and getting through the neutral zone and getting the puck on like, forward. And I think so. If you think about it from a Montreal perspective, and that like if the Lightning are gonna be on their game doing that, the only way. So when a defender gets it, like you have 2 forwards skating to the blue line, like automatically. So the only way to like counter that is, I guess, to try to like counter the counter and like maybe pick off that pass, get an odd man rush yourself while the Bolts are trying to be aggressive. And they did get a couple chances, but overall, I think the Lightning obviously were more effective.
Yeah, 100%. And there were a few goals coming up that they kind of played their own version of that, where, turnovers were everything against Montreal in this game. All of our 5-on-5, I think all of them except for one, all of our 5-on-5 goals that we had came off of turnovers. It wasn't like set up in our zone and go down. They were all deep board play turnovers or picked off in the middle of the ice.
Yeah, except for the Hedman one.
Right, the power play goal. Yeah, and I think the first goal, so 2, but that was a power play goal. So the first goal was a 5-on-5. The Ruda one, that one wasn't off a turnover. That was just in deep. But Sergachev takes a weird penalty right towards the end of the first period. Letkinen toe picks right in front of the net. Like you can see it in fast time. I was like, Jesus, Sergachev just tackled him, you know. But when you see in slow motion, you can see his right skate pick on the ice, and he starts to fall. And Sergachev is already behind him, screaming towards him to defend him, and just pushes him down and takes the interference call, which ultimately it didn't matter. The Lightning PK was super, super strong, and they just killed it off immediately and went into the locker room 2-1 to start the second. And then the second is where we see those long stretch tape-to-tape passes. The first chance, right off rip. Sorelli is in our zone. Is that Rhodey?
Yeah, Rhodey's losing his mind.
Sorelli holds the puck in on our defensive zone, and Chernak is able to come in and pick it up. Well, Chernak then turns around and rifles a 75-foot pass from in between the dots all the way up to the blue line to Palat and creates a 2-on-1. That's exactly what the Canadians were looking to do in their own zone. So then you see the Lightning kind of play that own game. Well, Palat takes it, shuffles it over to Kucherov, and Kucherov backhands it home to make it 3-1. And then just a couple minutes later, Joseph comes in on a 2-on-1 with Johnson on the other side from a turnover. Both of these were on turnovers and both created odd man rushes. So you see Matthew Joseph comes streaking. He shoots to the left side of Price. Price knocks it down. And as Joseph is turning away from the goal, the puck ricochets off of his skate and goes right into Johnson's wheelhouse. And Johnson just pops it right into the net, cleaning up a garbage goal, which then sparks him for the rest of the game. From this point on, it's 4-1. The Lightning are taking bodies. They are dropping people out there. Savard, while he's trying to corral Perry on not a breakaway, but he has a chance off to the right side, Perry shoots the puck wide and goes to take it off of the boards. And Savard absolutely folds him into the boards. I mean, Perry caught air on this hit.
Yeah, it was huge.
Savard is not a small guy. And that's what I'm noticing more and more as this series goes along. We don't know much about Savard other than when he played against us in 2019 for the Blue Jackets when, we got fucking swept out of the first round. So he was a big part of that. But we haven't seen much from him otherwise because we got him relatively late in the regular season towards the trade deadline. So I'm noticing how big he is on the ice. Not an offensive guy. We talked about that. One of his offensive things in game 3, him trying to score goals led to an odd man rush and almost a goal. So, or I think it was the goal, the Deneau goal. So you don't see him do too much of that, but he is so big on the ice that he is a physical presence that we were missing if we weren't using Shen. But in our 2015 Cup run, when Steve Yzerman was our GM, all of our players were skilled. And this is something that you and I screamed about afterwards, was that we don't have anybody big on the ice. Nobody out there could drop the gloves and take somebody on if needed. Everyone was a very touch and go, streaky player. And I think that came into effect with the Hawks' third and fourth lines. Well, we have all of that this season. And Savard is taking a charge on that. And that hit that he put on Perry is going to be on highlight reels from this Cup run. Every single time somebody puts a compilation together, that hit is going to be on there. That set the tone for the rest of the game for the Bolts. They were relentless on the body checks. Kucherov, right after this, it was off of that play. They moved the puck up. Kucherov almost hits a wraparound after a Palat shot goes wide to the left. Price, again, not looking very sharp on pucks that are played around him that aren't directly in front of him. Because the puck goes wide, he's kind of nonchalantly standing, and you see somebody yell and point, and he drops his pad down on the other side and just gets his left pad in the way of Kucherov's wraparound. So again, Price just not there, if the puck is not directly in front of him, they're getting by him. Whether they're creating traffic in front or if the pucks are being played from behind him, he's not there. And that, I think, is going to be a continuous tune for the rest of the series, too. Period two, I mean, 2 quick goals again, and then not a whole lot for the rest of the period when it came for offensive chances other than the wraparound. Odd man rushes were huge for the Bolts again in that period. Again, towards the end of the period, Vazzy lets in another kind of questionable goal to make it 4-2. Suzuki's coming up the right side. This is another awkward angle. Deneau scored his on a kind of awkward angle, and then Suzuki puts his in on a weird angle too. You see he's at a very like shallow angle from the right side, and he just shoots it across the middle, across the crease, and Vazzy's pad just pops up for a fraction of a second, and that's where the puck slides underneath of it. So I'm not seeing anything that's making Vazzy look like he's not in focus. Like everything we've seen from him, he's been lights out. And especially after this goal, he completely turns it on. And because you see how frustrated he is when he looks up at the Jumbotron, he sees that goal and he's like, oh, fuck me. How did I let that in? You know? And he just is a game breaker after that. The huge hits. Oh yeah, there were more hits and more hits and more hits even after the second goal there. Then they go into the period 3, 4-2. Vazzy early on. I don't know what his routine is in between periods, but having that goal go in right before the period ended, he came out on a different level. He was so locked in, like not the stereotypical wide-eyed Vazzy that we see in like the face-off in his defensive zone and stuff, but absolutely lights out. Did you see the maroon shot off the bar that came from Joseph and Johnson? I loved seeing Maroon get up on the rush like that. I wish he netted that so bad. He deserved that goal. He's been kind of quiet on the stat sheet this series, as pretty much throughout the whole playoffs, but his body presence is really what we use him for. To this point, I mean, how deflated did Montreal look up until this point?
Yeah. I saw a pregame interview, and they were talking about like just what they have to do. And I forget who it was. I totally escapes my mind who did the interview, but it's a player on the Canadiens, and he's talking about, you know, how they've been playing and how the Lightning have been playing. And he was like talking about, well, Andre Vasilevsky's like a good goalie, which I thought that was like an understatement, obviously. But
yeah, he's a good goalie, I guess.
Yeah, but he was like, we have to get a couple goals in on him, and we got to figure out how to do that. And when, I mean, the Caulfield shot was a great chance, and it was a great shot. And but aside from that, it wasn't like game 2, right? Where it's like they have a million opportunities and Vazzy's so good. But besides the Caulfield shot, they didn't create much except for, like you said, like there was a weak goal too. And there was a moment, I think, where who shot it? Was it Corey Perry? Someone shot it from like just up behind the left circle, and it went between 2 players in front. Like there was maybe a 1-foot window, and Vazzy snagged it with his glove.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, if they can't score, because I have no idea how he saw the puck like the entire time. Like,
yeah,
he
his
had
vision
to
was completely blocked.
He had to see the puck for maybe 0.4 of a second.
Yeah.
Like, and so I remember thinking, like, if they can't score there, like, they're not scoring for the rest of the game.
And, you know, I think just all the airs were out of the tire at that point. You know, you're down 4-2. Your goals haven't looked that great till that point. You're not playing the game. And also, I think coming out in the first and the second period, and those two immediate goals on the opening like 5 minutes of both of those periods, that does a lot. It's not like the Bolts scored in like the 10th minute and then they scored in the 14th minute. No, they came out both times and scored two goals within 5 minutes of the period opening. And now you're just constantly playing catch up. So you get a goal at the end of the period and you're like, okay, cool. You know, we're down 2-1, like we're still in this. 2-1 leads for us in this series. We're 3-0. If we take a 2-1 lead, we are 3-0 in this series. It happened in game 1, it happened in game 2, and in game 3. If it is 2-1, the game is over. And obviously they're not thinking about that. But you go into the locker room 2-1 after the first, you come out and they score two more goals and you're down 4-1. Then you score one at the end of that and you're down 4-2. You know, you're like trying to fight your way back and fight your way back. The scrums after the whistles have calmed down since game 1 because neither team wants to take a bad penalty. The Bolts don't want to take it and give them an opportunity. And the Canadians sure as hell don't want to see any more of the power play from the Bolts. Going into this series, they were unstoppable. It was 42 or what was it? They were
42 out of 45.
Or 42 for 45 going into this series. And now the Bolts are batting like 500 on their power play. So they do not want to see chances just handed to this Lightning power play. So these scrums have died down. That's where a lot of the energy of Montreal comes into play is after the whistle gimmicky bullshit. And there just wasn't enough of that. So they're just grasping at straws, trying to find energy at this point. I think I noted this down about halfway through the third. The Bolts' ability is far too deep for the Habs to keep up with. The Habs' one-dimensional play has been figured out. Sit 4 back and cherry pick goals. It's the same thing. They don't want to play the speed game. The entire game, they did not change anything about their offensive pressure and their offensive game plan through games 1, 2, and 3. There has not been a noticeable change, even for like a casual fan, you're staring at the TV, everything generally looks the same. You're just looking at the ice tilt at that point. But I mean, I've watched, my folks are from upstate New York. I've watched hockey my whole life. Didn't play because I grew up in Florida. Of course, you don't play fucking hockey when you grow up in Florida, except if you grow up in Tampa these days, you're playing hockey. It's a hockey town. We will reiterate that until we're dead. But I've watched this game for a long time, and I don't see anything different from the Canadians from game 1 to game 3. There's nothing that has changed that has been inspiring for them to play. And then Tyler Johnson flashing his 2015 skill again. He steals a pass in the middle, dead center of the ice. The Habs defenseman passes it to the middle, right at center ice, and Tyler Johnson's just standing there, picks off the pass. These are the plays that you're mentioning that they need to find passes to go straight up the middle, or they need to do the same thing that the Bolts are doing here. With the Bolts having those tape-to-tape passes from blue line to blue line, they need somebody hovering in the middle to pick those passes off. Tyler Johnson is putting on a clinic on how to do that. He did it in this play right here to get his second goal. He picks the pass off in the middle, works his way down, just walks down the middle of the ice, basically uncontested, fires a shot off, picks up his own rebound, and puts it in the net for his second of the game. Now, I know July is not usually a month where hockey is being played, but Tyler Johnson is the highest goal scorer in the month of July in NHL history now with 2 goals. I thought that was a fun one. That's another cherry-picked one that I really enjoyed. Almost immediately after that, though, because it's 5-2 now, that's where Perry tries that shot again that you mentioned where Vazzy snagged it before. Now, Vazzy got beat by this on a Mayfield goal to lose game 6 against the Islanders. It was right up against his left side on the post, and he was down. There was about a 5-6 inch gap above his shoulder to the crossbar. You see Perry work his way down and come back up off the boards to go near the same spot that Mayfield was in. And you can see, even in normal speed, Vazzy heightens up a little bit. He straightens his back and lifts that shoulder. There's only maybe 3.5 inches of space in between Vazzy's shoulder and the bar, and Perry absolutely just rockets one in that 3-inch gap. And this is the kind of thing that I was talking about in the series preview, is that Perry doesn't have the legs that everyone else is going to have in series like this. There's a reason why he's on the fourth line, and there's a reason why you thought it was so odd that they put the fourth line out there, because they're so slow. It's not about matching speed, but Perry's able to do this weird crafty shit deep inside the offensive zone, whether it's precision passing or putting a puck in a 3-inch gap above a goaltender's shoulder. And Perry, when he scored that goal, that was the energy I expected out of a veteran that scored a goal when you were already down 5-2. Deadpan on his face, gives his fist bumps, goes to the bench. None of this exuberant celebration that has been coming, because that 5-2 goal, they freaked, or the 4-2 goal. Yeah, it was 4-1. When they scored that second goal, oh, they were elated. And it's like, you're still down 4-2, and that was a shit goal. It was on a fluke chance. Like, these are young kids scoring these goals. Of course, they're going to be hype. I'm not telling these people to not be excited when you score a goal, but act like you've been there, especially when your team is getting railed. And that's where Perry brings in that veteran presence. That was right after they pulled Price to have the odd man advantage. So it was a 6-on-5 goal. It was not even strength, even though that didn't have much of an effect on it. Shortly after this, they pulled Price again, and that's when Gaudreau takes another puck away from a Montreal defenseman in deep in their own zone. They're about 7 feet away from their own goal, and they're just passing back and forth in between each other with 2 bolts pressuring them in their zone. What are you doing? Just get the puck up the ice. And it's like, oh, no, you take it. No. You take the puck. You take the puck. And Barclay just comes in and goes, well, I'll take the puck. Steals the puck and passes it to Gaudreau, or to Coleman for the empty net to make it 5-3, or to make it 6-3. And that was it. I mean, the game was over after that 5th goal. But every single goal, except for the first 5-on-5, where Ruda scored, and then the Hedman goal, every single one of these goals came off of Canadians' turnovers. And I think that just continues on into game 4. If they can pin down their puck possession, it will make the game more interesting, but they look desperate. And with desperate energy comes mistakes. And this is where you see the Bolts capitalizing on these mistakes, is when the Habs are getting desperate and they're turning over pucks. My one big takeaway was puck control biting Habs in the ass. Turnovers are burying them. Majority of 5-on-5 goals come off turnovers. I mean, I noted it right after the game already, just coming fresh off the watch. So, couple of cherry pick things I really like right now. Vazzy is now the 5th. He is now in the 5th spot in winning percentage in NHL playoff history with a minimum of 70 games played. And these are all, the other 4 are not modern era goaltenders. Vazzy is the only modern era goaltender with a winning percentage in the NHL playoffs that high now, after that win. And the Bolts now hold the top 5 spots for most points in the playoffs this year. Kucherov is at 32. Point is the next one at 23. That just shows you how insane Kucherov has been during this playoff stretch. And he takes the Conn Smythe now that Point's kind of cooled off a little bit. It's either going to be him or Vazzy. I don't know how you don't give it to Kucherov if you're not going to give it to Vazzy. I guess Point is a nice 3rd, but if he kept up that goal streak that he had going, he would 100% be taking home the Conn Smythe. So we have Kucherov at 32, Pointer at 23, Stamkos at 18, Hedman at 18, and Alex Killorn at 17, the top 5 spots. And Killorn's been out for 2 games on top of that too. The 6th, 7th, and 8th spot for points on the playoff this season, none of them are in the Stanley Cup Finals. I think it was Gabriel Landeskog, a player from the Vegas Golden Knights, and then Pasternak from the Bruins are in this 6, 7, 8 spots. You have to go down to number 9 on the list to find a Montreal Canadian, and that's Nick Suzuki with 15 points. So our top spot guy for our points this year doubles the Canadians' top point scorer at 15. So a couple of quotes real quick, and then you can tell me how you feel about game 4. The first one was, this is from Brian Burns, who's one of the Bolts beat reporters. John Cooper on what Alex Killorn means to the Bolts. He's become a part of so many wars with me personally. He's been such a durable part of our franchise, and you take him for granted. His contribution to our team is an elite level. Coop has said Killorn has been working his tail off to return to the ice. If Killorn's back for game 4, what do you expect from him? He's on the first power play line. He's on the second line with Cirelli and Stamkos. Where do you think he plugs into this on an already dominating Lightning team?
So I would say I expect less ice time.
Okay.
Who took his spot on the power play?
Cirelli,
that's right. And Cirelli has been playing the boards. I think he'll take back the power play spot just because he fits that role so well.
And it's been evident that a couple power plays that we've had, the puck possession down deep hasn't been the best, and that's where he thrives.
Yeah, but I do think that I gotta say Tyler Johnson deserves some time on these second and third lines still, and I wouldn't mind seeing Killorn split it. You know what I'm saying? Like throw Tyler Johnson out there when you don't want to skate him too hard.
Yeah.
So I say on a power play he probably gets a point. He probably gets a point there. I don't expect that much from him. I mean, I expect a solid performance. I don't expect him to be weak. I just don't think he'll be on the ice as much as we're used to.
You got to get him out there for game 4, especially if we're looking for the sweep too. So I think you're right. I think he does take a little bit of time off, especially with Johnson surging. I also thought that for game 4, what are the chances of Cooper putting in the original triplets line of Palat, Johnson, and Kucherov from our 2015 run? Do you think we see that combo once in game 4? Because this next quote that I had up kind of addresses what to expect after this season. This is from Grace Remington. This is John Cooper on the difference between these 2 Stanley Cup runs between last year and this year. Last year, it's like the first day of school. This year, it almost feels like the last day of school. We don't know what our team's going to look like again if we're all going to be together again. So with Johnson all but leaving after this season, especially after we try to put him on waivers, nobody picked him up. We talked about him going to the Kraken because that's where he's from. They need that veteran presence. He'll slot in somewhere on the expansion team. The expansion draft is in like 18 days. So do you think we see it just for old time's sake? Like, does the score have to be run up? Or does that sound good with Johnson surging right now? Do you see Johnson center for Kucherov and Palat?
I mean, I get the nostalgia aspect of it, and Johnson is playing out of his mind, but out of his mind still is not Braden Point. So,
but with Killorn out, like you mentioned, and if we're going to rotate lines,
the Canadians, gay. Canucks, fuck them.
With Killorn being out and them rotating lines, do you think that there's a chance? I think there's a chance. That's all I'm saying. I think that there's a chance that Cooper just does us a solid and throws out the triplet line one last time. And I think it's a nice send-off for Johnson. And especially if he can net a point while they're together, I mean, My God, that just adds to his lore. I mean, he's still top 5 in franchise points for us, despite
think
the season.
if it happens, it's in the last 10 minutes of the third period.
Yeah, I think if we're up a acknowledgeable amount, like if we're going into the third, 2-3 goals up, I think I see that line, and I hope I see that line, because I mean he's been taking reps on other lines with Kalor now, so I really hope we get to see it. I really do. I have one more quote about Tyler Johnson from John Cooper. I'm extremely happy for the win, but I might be happier for Tyler Johnson. And that's another thing where I think that it really comes into play, considering the last few seasons and our cup, our playoff presence since 2015. I think we see that line one more time. I hope so. So game 4, still in Montreal.
I got another one, right? Although all 3 of these players will be on the team next year, I wouldn't mind seeing Stamkos return to the first line at the end of the game.
Put him in center.
Yeah.
He's been taking all of his shifts on the right wing. So to see one more Kucherov Stammer line would be satisfying, to say the least. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if we're up a good amount of goals, I do think that we end up shifting this around a little bit, just as a nice little send off for the guys. Because I don't know what our team is going to look like next year. So we have a ton of young guys coming up, and we have a ton of cap issues to work out. And then big thank you to Anders Nilsson and Marian Gaborik for all that they've done for us on the ice this season, in the 0 lines and 0 ice time that they've been able to bring for us. You know, they're eating up the majority of our cap on the LTIR, but can we get a shout out for these guys, please, for doing absolutely nothing to help us win? And yet it's still talked about. I had to stay off Twitter last night after the game because I wanted to just bark at everyone that talked about the cap situation. And it's starting to get acknowledged by broadcasters and stuff. Elliot Friedman said something on the Canadian cast last night where he's like, I don't want to hear about this anymore. He's like, we've talked about it so many times. They're not doing anything wrong. Most of their cap space is tied up in players that are set to retire. So I really hope that the team just gives Nilsson and Gaborik a ring. Like, I think that would be the biggest fuck you to the whole squad that's been hating on this cap situation that we have. I think we give them both a ring. I really hope so. When we end up winning this series. So I'm thinking sweep. I don't think there's any way around it now. I think we've seen everything that Montreal has to offer, unless for some reason they have a bag of tricks that they've decided to pull after going down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals. I don't see this changing.
It's a bold strategy, probably.
What is your score prediction, and then who's your Conn Smythe if we win?
Conn Smythe is Kucherov. Especially coming back from an injury and then fighting through another injury, for not a serious one, but like for 2 games he's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But just coming back and being fit enough and looking like he never missed a day.
Yeah.
Literally after an entire season. I think it goes to Kucherov. I do think I wish Point kept scoring or getting assists even. Yeah. I wish Point kept getting points, because I think last year he had a great case for it, and Hedman did too. But like, you know, it could have just as easily been Point last year, and I think it would have been nice, like, if, you know, he was more deserving this year, but he's not. So it's like you said, it's either Vasilevsky or Kucherov, and I think it's Kucherov.
Yeah, I do too. Score prediction for game 4. Do you have one? I know these are kind of odd.
Yeah, I don't know, right? Like, honestly, 6-2. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say
like
4-2. So I'm right in that same wheelhouse. I was trying to be a little bit of a realist here. I say 4-2. And I think, well, I'll say 5-2, and that fifth goal comes on an empty net goal.
yeah. I just think if the Bolts, first of all, something I wanted to talk about that I didn't realize until the last broadcast, the the Canadians have not had a lead the entire series.
Mhm.
For 1 minute. They have not had a lead.
Yeah,
So if the Bolts start hot, which we have been, uh, if they start even close to as hot as last game, it's gonna be very negative on the Canadian sideline. And then I feel like that kind of has the trickle down effect to, like, players sort of quitting on their team, or like just
yeah,
not feeling
and that's where the
it,
inexperience
maybe
comes
giving
into play.
90%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where that inexperience comes into play. And you know what I saw last game? I saw a full 60. Again, I saw a full 60. So, and Zach is frozen. So, I mean, that's pretty much all we got. One more
No,
time.
I'm not frozen.
Oh, there you are. You were on my end for a second. Well, I say 5-2, empty net goal makes it the fifth. You say 6-2. I think they start hot again. I don't think the Canadians have a lead at all in game 4. Bring it home, boys.
Yeah.
Please. So one more time, social tags, Twitter, LHF_pod. My Medium page is austinjandrews.medium.com. You can email us at lowhangingfruitpod@gmail.com. This will be going up on our YouTube page and then these 6 other platforms that the podcast comes out on. So everyone, please have a safe weekend. Be mindful of fireworks. We don't need a Jason Pierre-Paul situation again this off season. Please retain all of your fingers throughout the whole weekend. And Zach, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Hopefully this is our last, or this upcoming recap will be our last of the Lord's Stanley series.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to cut it short. I really would.
Yeah.
Something that Zach brought up today, we do have 2 other guys that might be joining us for another series, which would be the off-season recap for the NFL. Zach and I obviously are both Buccaneers fans, so we'll be covering the NFC South. Another friend of ours is a diehard Ravens fan, and the others is a diehard Eagles fan. So you're going to get a little bit of everything from those divisions as well. We'll more than likely split it up in between AFC and NFC for the episodes, or we'll just have to do it by division depending on how long we want to go with it. So hopefully, yeah, we only got one more recap left in us. And then after that, we're going to have to come up with some new projects.
Yeah, I will say, for anyone that's listened to these, clearly we know, or I know about the Bolts, right? But like my knowledge is much more extensive in other sports for the teams I don't like as well. So I think it'll be a good step into the NFL.
Yeah, and it'll probably be annoyingly in depth, knowing the other 2 guys that will be joining us as well. They tend to be a lot more serious than us, and I can tell we've done a good job of holding back the antics for the Lord Stanley series. So I'm excited. I'm gonna get on the phone with those guys and see what we got going on. I'll get an outline running for us. So thank you for joining me. Have fun bowling. Say hi to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll do.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.